The sirens blared, their shrill wail vibrating through the steel walls of the command center. Captain Alaratran's gaze flicked toward the holoscreen, where the fiery streaks of enemy warships were rapidly encroaching upon Earth's borders. The entire galaxy had been buzzing with whispers for weeks. The Deathworlders were on the move. But now, the rumors were solidifying into something more lethal. "This isn't a drill," her XO, Lieutenant Carson Duran, muttered under his breath as he flipped through tactical reports on his tablet. Alara's jaw clenched, her fingers instinctively tightening around the armrest of her chair. The Deathworlders, the war-hardened species known for their vicious survival instincts and relentless pursuit of conquest, had been playing a careful game of diplomacy for decades. But now, as Earth stood on the brink of a full-scale war, their masks had fallen. The galaxy had always underestimated humanity's resilience, and that mistake was about to cost them dearly. "We need to respond, Captain," Carson added, his voice a mixture of urgency and disbelief. "They're going to hit Earth in less than 20 hours. Alara nodded slowly, her mind racing. This wasn't just a military conflict, this was an existential threat. The Deathworlders had already wiped out several civilizations who had dared to challenge them. She had no illusions about what would happen if humanity was next. "Alert all sectors," Alara barked, her voice steady but filled with the weight of command. "Prepare for battle stations. We're not backing down. Let's show them what we've got." She stood up, the swish of her combat boots echoing as she moved toward the strategy table. The holograms of Earth's orbit shimmered in front of her as the fleet commanders synced their data. Every ship, every weapon, every tactical advantage was now a matter of survival. But her mind wasn't entirely on the mission. She was thinking about her people, the humans who had endured so much and yet never yielded. Her motivation wasn't just duty, it was a bond that tied her to her fellow citizens, to the world she loved fiercely. The Deathworlders had underestimated humanity's capacity for unity, for resilience. But now, they were going to see just how wrong they were. Carson joined her at the table, his face tight with tension. "If they're playing for keeps, we'll need more than just defense. We need a counteroffensive. We need to make them regret ever setting foot in this sector." Alara met his gaze, a flicker of resolve igniting in her chest. "And we will. But we need to show them we're not some backwater species to be crushed beneath their boots." The sudden sharpness in her tone caught Carson off guard. He straightened, recognizing the fire in her eyes. "Aye, Captain. I'll start assembling the teams for a tactical strike." The door to the command center slammed open, and a figure strode in, a tall, broad-shouldered man clad in the signature black and silver uniform of Earth's Special Forces. Major Jace Thorne, the last person Alara had expected to see here, walked toward her with purpose. "You're planning an assault, Captain," Jace said, his deep voice carrying through the room. "I want in." Alara arched an eyebrow, her lips curling into a tight smile. "You've been out of the field for a while. Are you sure you're ready for this?" Jace's eyes darkened with the weight of the past, a scar across his cheek catching the dim light. "I've been ready for this my entire life. And if this is going to be the end of humanity, then I'm going to make sure they remember our name." The room fell silent for a moment, and Alara could almost hear the collective heartbeat of every person in the room. Humanity was standing on the precipice, and their fate hung in the balance. She looked at him, and without hesitation, nodded. "Welcome to the team, Major." There was no time for anything else. As the fleet commanders scrambled to coordinate their ships, Alara took one last look at Earth's image floating before her, an intricate mosaic of blue and green, now marred by the approaching storm of war. She drew a deep breath and turned back to the strategy table, her mind focused. The Deathworlders would soon learn that humanity had a power they had never anticipated. The power of unity, of resolve, of sheer, unyielding force. "Let's make them regret underestimating us," Alara muttered, more to herself than anyone else. Carson's eyes gleamed with understanding. "For Earth." "For Earth," she echoed. As the countdown to battle began, the galaxy would never forget the day humanity stopped playing nice. And the Deathworlders would learn, far too late, that they had awakened a sleeping giant. The distant hum of engines reverberated through the hull of the Solstice, a massive battlecruiser now stationed at Earth's outer orbit. Captain Alara Tran stood before the command center's viewport, staring out into the void. A million stars twinkled, oblivious to the chaos unfolding below. Earth was beautiful from space, fragile, serene, but that calm was shattered by the incoming threat. The Deathworlders were closing in, and humanity was about to show them that the word fragile had never been a part of the human lexicon. Captain Tran, a voice interrupted her thoughts. Lieutenant Carson Duran's tone was sharp, but there was an undercurrent of uncertainty. You need to see this. Turning toward him, Alara stepped to the console, her boots clicking softly on the metallic floor. The holographic display shimmered to life, revealing a live feed of the Deathworlder fleet, more ships than Earth's intelligence had predicted. They were massive, each one a dark silhouette against the stars. The speed with which they had arrived was unsettling. Alara's brow furrowed. How did they get here so quickly? We've been tracking them for months. Carson shook his head. Their ships can bypass standard hyperspace gates. They've found a way to compress their travel time. They've been holding back, waiting for the right moment. And now they've chosen Earth, she murmured, a chill creeping through her. She could feel the weight of her command settle heavily on her shoulders. The Deathworlders had always been an enigma, fierce and terrifying, but with a methodical cunning that belied their brutal reputation. They were patient hunters, waiting for the right time to strike. And now, Earth was their prey. We need to act fast, Carson continued. They've got us surrounded. They're closing in on the planet in waves. We don't have the firepower to hold them off for long, not with our current fleet. Alara nodded, her mind racing. Prepare the Solstice for an attack. I want to be in the front lines. We'll buy Earth time to regroup. Carson's eyes flashed with concern. You want to lead this charge? Alone? This isn't just a military operation. It's personal, Alara replied, her voice a steady whisper that carried the weight of her words. She wasn't just defending Earth as a captain. She was defending her people, her family, her home. The Deathworlders had underestimated humanity for too long, but now they would see the true strength of Earth's will. She turned toward the holoscreen again, her gaze hardening. Send out the signal. Rally the fleet. This is our moment. As the fleet commanders scrambled to initiate the counteroffensive, the ship's PA system crackled to life, announcing the final stages of battle preparation. Alara's heart beat steadily in her chest, though her mind was heavy with the knowledge of what was to come. A battlefield was a place of chaos, but it was also where warriors proved their worth. But even as she gave orders, Alara couldn't shake the sense that something was off. The Deathworlders had always favored direct assaults, overwhelming their enemies with sheer force. This felt different, more calculated. They weren't just looking for a fight. They were searching for a decisive blow. What aren't they telling us? A sharp beep pulled Alara from her thoughts. Major Jace Thorne appeared on the command deck, his face taut with determination. He met her gaze, his eyes hard, knowing full well the kind of battle they were about to face. You're still on this, Captain? Jace's voice was gruff but steady. Alara gave him a single nod, her lips pressing into a thin line. I'm not backing down, Major. Not now. Not ever. He smirked, though there was a darkness behind his eyes. Wouldn't expect anything less. We'll need everyone on deck if we're going to survive this. A soft beep interrupted their exchange, and Alara's eyes flicked to the screen. A new message was coming in, encrypted, marked as high priority. She hesitated for a moment, then swiped her hand across the console to open the transmission. The hologram flickered, revealing a familiar face. Admiral Rex Tanaka, commander of the Earth Defense Fleet. His expression was grim, his face weathered with years of service. Captain Tran, the situation has escalated. We've lost contact with 2 of our stations on the Outer Rim. The Deathworlders have deployed stealth units. We have no eyes on them. Alara's pulse quickened. Stealth units? The Deathworlders were adapting faster than they had anticipated. We're putting our best teams together to neutralize the threat, but we need you to hold the line long enough for reinforcements to arrive." "Understood, Admiral," Alara said, her voice unwavering. "We'll give you the time you need. And we'll make sure the Deathworlders learn the true meaning of regret." Tanaka's hologram flickered as he nodded. "Good hunting, Captain. Earth's future is in your hands." The transmission cut off, and Alara turned toward her crew, determination burning in her chest. "Everyone, listen up. We have a mission. It's not just about survival, it's about sending a message. We stand united, no matter the odds. Earth is not some weakling to be wiped out. We fight for every inch of this planet." The crew members nodded in silent agreement. Major Thorne gave a sharp nod as he turned to the battle map. "Let's make sure they remember what happens when they mess with us." As the Solstice hurtled toward the heart of the conflict, Alara could feel the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. This wasn't just a fight for Earth. It was a fight to prove to the galaxy that humanity's fire would not be extinguished. And as the first wave of Deathworlder ships loomed on the horizon, the true battle had just begun. The Solstice trembled as it entered the outer edge of the Deathworlder fleet. Alara Tran gripped the command chair, her knuckles white, the steady hum of the ship's engines vibrating beneath her feet. The first volley of missiles had been fired, slicing through the silence of space in a deadly arc. It was only a matter of time before they collided with the enemy. But the calmness Alara had shown earlier had begun to give way to something darker. She was ready for this fight, but the sheer scale of what was unfolding now was unlike anything she'd anticipated. "Status report." Alara's voice rang out across the command deck, sharp and focused. Lieutenant Carson Durand snapped to attention, his fingers dancing across the control panels. "We've engaged the outermost ships. Shields are holding, but we've got more on the way. They're not wasting time." Her eyes narrowed as she surveyed the tactical readout. Waves of ships were pouring in, forming an impenetrable wall that dwarfed their own fleet. The Deathworlders weren't playing games. They intended to crush Earth's defenders with overwhelming force. "Keep the pressure on them. Hit them with everything we've got," Alara commanded, her voice steel. "Direct hit on their flagship, Captain." Carson reported, his face lighting up with momentary hope. "The shields are down. They're vulnerable." Alara didn't smile. "Not yet." She leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the readout. "Fire everything we have. This is our chance." The Solstice's weapon systems whined as they powered up. Alara's mind raced with calculations, angles, trajectories, timing. Everything had to be perfect. Target locked. Firing. Carson's voice held the edge of excitement. The Solstice unleashed a barrage of missiles, energy beams lancing out across the void. The flagship's hull shuddered under the assault, but it didn't break. The Deathworlders weren't as weak as they seemed. On the other side of the command deck, Major Jace Thorne, arms crossed and brow furrowed, watched the battle unfold. His tactical mind had already begun processing contingencies, looking for weaknesses in the enemy formation. "Captain, they're adapting," Jace said, his voice laced with concern. "Their ships are repositioning faster than we can target them. They're coordinating in a way we didn't expect." Alara's gaze flickered toward the tactical display. The Deathworlders were shifting their formations, becoming more fluid, more reactive. She hadn't expected this level of tactical intelligence. She had underestimated them, and now the cost of that miscalculation was mounting. "They're learning," she muttered, barely loud enough for Jace to hear. Carson's voice broke through the tension. "Incoming, missiles from the left flank. Shields are holding, but barely." The ship jolted under the impact of several hits. Sparks erupted from a nearby panel, the hum of the engines shifting in pitch as the power systems strained. Alara gritted her teeth. "Status on the shields," she barked. 30% capacity, Carson responded quickly. "We can't take much more of this." The command deck vibrated again, the unmistakable feeling of an explosion far too close. Alara shot to her feet, fists clenched at her sides. This was no longer just a fight for survival. The Deathworlders weren't here to conquer, they were here to wipe them off the map. And they weren't giving Earth a chance. The ship shook again, sending her sprawling against the console. Her vision blurred for a moment, but she blinked it away, steadying herself as she grabbed hold of the chair. "Captain!" Jace's voice rang out urgently. "Look at the top left quadrant, now!" A flashing red warning lit up the tactical screen. An unknown ship had slipped through their defenses, approaching the Solstice at high speed. This wasn't just any ship, it was smaller, sleeker, more agile. And from the looks of it, it was carrying something deadly. "They've got stealth units on board," Alara murmured, recognizing the shape of the craft. "Prepare for boarders." A tense silence followed her command. The crew stiffened, but there was no time for fear. The Solstice's cannons were recharged, and the crew had their orders. This wasn't a battle they could lose. "Reroute power to the starboard cannon," Alara commanded. "If they want to come on board, we'll make sure they regret it." Carson's fingers flew over the console, redirecting energy. Jace moved to his station, his focus unshaken. Alara could feel the weight of their resolve. These people, her crew, were with her to the end. The smaller craft came into firing range. With a practiced hand, Alara pressed the launch button. The Solstice's cannons blazed to life, targeting the elusive vessel. The blast hit, and the small ship erupted into a fireball. For a moment, there was silence. But Alara knew that wasn't the end. "We've done some damage, but they're sending more," Carson warned. "They're relentless." Alara exhaled slowly, glancing toward Jace. His expression had hardened, no doubt sensing what she was feeling. They were being pushed to the edge, but humanity would never yield. "Not today. Keep fighting. We don't stop until Earth is safe." The tactical readout continued to flash with new targets, new threats. But in Alara's mind, there was no other choice. They would fight back. They would fight until their last breath. As the Solstice charged into the fray once more, the Deathworlders learned the hard way that underestimating humanity's tenacity would be their greatest mistake. The Solstice lurched under another barrage of enemy fire. Alara Tran's teeth rattled as the ship's systems groaned in protest. The hull was taking a beating, but it was holding together, just. The Deathworlders had pushed them to the brink. "Shields at 15%, Captain." Carson Duran's voice rang out, his fingers flying over the controls. "We can't last much longer at this rate." Alara gripped the edge of her chair, trying to steady her racing pulse. The steady hum of the ship's systems had become a chorus of warning lights and alarms. She couldn't let her crew see the doubt she was fighting. "Not now." "Redirect all remaining power to the starboard shields," Alara barked. "Get us a few more minutes. We need to hold them off." The words barely left her mouth before the Solstice shook again. This time, the impact was followed by a deep, resonating crack. The lights flickered, dimming for a fraction of a second before coming back to life. "Major Thorne," Alara turned to Jace, who had remained silently focused throughout the chaos. "Status on their formations? Any sign of weakness?" Jace, ever the strategist, glanced at the tactical display, his eyes scanning the endless wave of Deathworlder ships. "Not yet. They're still adapting faster than we can anticipate." But, he paused, a slight furrow appearing on his brow. "There's something strange. Their movements are slowing down." Alara didn't wait for an explanation. "Explain it." "They're trying to move in for a final strike, but their ships are bunching up. They're too focused on getting to us, Captain. They're vulnerable." Alara's heart skipped a beat. It was the opening they needed. The question was whether they could capitalize on it before the Solstice was torn apart. "Carson, prepare a counteroffensive," she commanded. "We hit them with everything we've got. This is our one shot." As Carson began to execute the order, the comms flared to life, breaking the tense silence. Incoming transmission, Captain. Lieutenant Reynolds's voice came through, shaking slightly under the pressure. It's from the Deathworlder flagship. Alara's stomach clenched. She knew what was coming. A final ultimatum. Put it through, she ordered, her voice tight. The image that flickered onto the screen was not what she expected. It wasn't the fleet commander's face, nor the stern, faceless envoy she had seen earlier. Instead, the image that filled the screen was of a young woman, tall, pale, with eyes like burning coals. Her hair was a stark contrast to her icy skin, silvery white and pulled into a tight braid. There was a cruel beauty in her gaze as she looked directly at Alara. I am Drath, the woman's voice resonated through the speakers. And this is where your futile resistance ends, human. Surrender now, or we will eradicate everything your species holds dear. Alara's jaw tightened. Her pulse quickened, but her response was cool. We've faced worse than you. Drath's eyes narrowed, and her lips curled into a smile. Such defiance. Pity. You will soon learn that your species is insignificant in the grand scheme of things. Your defiance won't save you. Alara's fingers curled into fists at her sides, but she refused to show fear. She had no intention of surrendering, not when humanity's future hung in the balance. You'll learn not to underestimate us, Alara said, cutting the transmission before Drath could respond. The tension on the bridge was palpable as Alara returned her focus to the battlefield. Every move, every decision had led them here. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on her, but now there was no turning back. Major Thorne, she said, eyes locked on the tactical display. Do you still see their vulnerability? Yes, Jace replied, his voice unwavering. We have them. We can punch through their defenses if we strike now. Carson, fire on my mark. Alara's voice was steady, every word purposeful. The bridge fell silent as the crew braced themselves. Every second felt like an eternity. Then, Alara's finger jabbed forward toward the glowing red target in the middle of the enemy fleet. Now! She shouted. The solstice unleashed its full firepower. Beams of energy and missiles launched simultaneously, streaking across the void in a spectacular display of fire and fury. The Deathworlders' shield systems scrambled to react, but they couldn't shift their formations in time. The solstice's attack hit its mark, tearing through the Deathworlder flagship's outer defenses. Alara watched in grim satisfaction as the flagship faltered, its shields flickering and then collapsing under the relentless barrage. The ship's hull exploded in a fiery burst, sending debris scattering through the vacuum of space. The battle wasn't over yet, but Alara could feel the shift. The Deathworlders had underestimated the tenacity of humanity, and now they were starting to pay for it. Status on the enemy, Lieutenant? Alara asked, her voice calmer now, though her heart still raced. Carson's voice cut through the tension, but this time, there was hope in his tone. They're retreating, Captain. Their forces are disbanding. We've broken their command structure. Alara allowed herself a moment of relief, but she knew better than to celebrate too soon. This was just the beginning. The Deathworlders might have lost their flagship, but there would be more challenges ahead. Still, for the first time since the battle began, she allowed herself to breathe. We've won this round, Alara said, her voice strong. But the war is far from over. As the solstice drifted through the wreckage, the crew silently absorbed the weight of their victory. Humanity had faced annihilation, but once again, they had proven that no enemy was beyond defeat.